Go.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Pittsburgh Law Enforcement Center for tonight's forum, focusing on the candidates for Kansas House of Representatives District 3. My name is Blake Benson. I'm with the Pittsburgh Area Chamber of Commerce. We're the ones coordinating tonight's forum. I first would like to thank both of our candidates, Chuck Smith and Monica Mernan, for joining us tonight. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your willingness to serve the residents of District 3. Thank you to those in attendance tonight. We allowed each candidate a certain number of people to attend in person. We understand there are some issues with YouTube that residents aren't able to watch this via YouTube tonight, probably, but it will be, I guess, rebroadcast on YouTube at a later time, hopefully by tomorrow. So still plenty of opportunities for folks to get on the city's YouTube channel and watch this, but it is being broadcast live on the city's public access channels. So thank you to those that are in attendance and those that are watching from home tonight. So and thank you again to the city of Pittsburgh for allowing us to have the forum in this room, because it really does allow so many more people to view the forum either this evening or at a later date. So thank you to the city of Pittsburgh. Some housekeeping notes, some thoughts on the format for tonight. It's pretty simple. Essentially, each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide their opening statement, 2 minutes to answer all the questions, and 2 minutes for your closing statements. Each candidate will be asked 3 prepared questions that the candidates did receive in advance, and then we will transition to questions that were submitted by the general public in advance, and we will get through as many of those as we have time tonight, shooting for around 7:45 to wrap things up, and then we'll go into our closing statements. So I know you're both familiar with the yellow and the red card. The yellow card, I will just give you a sign when you've got 30 seconds left, and the red card means that you are out of time. So I ask you to be respectful of those. We drew numbers at the beginning of the evening, and Ms. Mernan, you will give your opening statement first, and you have 2 minutes to do so.
Thanks, Blake. Thanks to all the folks that you mentioned. It's really nice that the city allows us to do this. And thanks to the folks who are watching now and later on. My name is Monica Mernan. I'm running for the House 3rd District. This would be the 3rd time that I've run for this seat. And it just, quite frankly, is an honor to serve the citizens of the Pittsburgh area in the Kansas House. One of the things that I'd like to share with folks who are making a decision about who they're going to vote for this year when November 3rd rolls around is a couple things about how I take on the job and how I would continue to take it on. First of all, I look at all the issues that come up in the Kansas House as an opportunity to learn and look at the facts and the data that are behind everything. Look at all the different perspectives and put those together to make the best decisions possible. The other thing that I have done since I've been there is to make sure that I know the folks that are around. So I have made it just one thing on my list at the beginning of each session is I know all the House members' names and the region where they're from and at least something about them in the first 2 weeks. I don't think you can do this job without building relationships, without knowing people, and without, from the very beginning, respecting the fact that people are coming from all over the state to serve the people that are in their area. And I don't think you can do that by keeping yourself in one area. For some folks that I haven't had the chance to meet, I have a broad base of experiences that I bring to this job, including serving on the city commission, running the Family Resource Center for 17 years, being involved in the creation of Community Health Center, and currently serving on several boards. And I think that that helps me do the job well and represent people well, and I'd like to keep doing it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mernan. Mr. Smith, 2 minutes opening statement.
Thank you. I want to thank Blake and the Chamber of Commerce for having this. I'd like to thank my friends that have helped me walk, that have helped me print things, who have helped me do whatever the campaign consists of. I'd like to thank my family and friends that are here tonight. And like Monica, this is my 3rd time running. Not as successful as hers, but it is my 3rd time. I'd like to thank that I've served Pittsburgh for 50 years. I came to Pittsburgh in 1969 as a high school basketball player, and we played in the Pittsburgh High Invitational. I was amazed with Broadway, how many cars were dragging up and down the gut and how classic they were. And it really, really was a neat thing to see. I came back to Pittsburgh in 1970 on a football scholarship and spent 5 years in college here. I lettered in football and baseball, and like I say, I feel like that's serving the community also. I coached J.L. Hutchison League for 10 years. I was on the J.L. Hutchison board for 10 years. I worked the CETA program and the JTPA programs, which were disadvantaged youth, so I saw poverty at its best in Kansas. When I saw that, I thought of my mom. My mom was one of 15 children, and they were the poorest people in the county. And nothing was given to them back then. They had to earn everything they had, or they just did without. And you know, all 15 of them, none of them went to college. All 15 of them grew up to be hard-working, successful people. And like I say, good deal. I was on the credit union supervisory board. I want you to really listen to the word constituents. If you hear the word constituents, I voted to what my constituents wanted. In Pittsburgh community, half of the constituents are here and half of them are here. So when you say you voted with your constituents, I think it's a cop-out answer, so you got to be careful with that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you both. Our first question that the candidates received in advance will be answered tonight first by Mr. Smith. And the first question is this. There's no doubt that issues surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic will dominate the 2020 Kansas legislative session when it begins in January. One topic is likely to be the state's role in a public health crisis like the one we have experienced this year. In your opinion, what should the state's role be in a public health crisis like this? Mr. Smith, 2 minutes.
Well, I think that the state needs to open up. You know, we didn't know what to do, so this spring we closed our schools and we closed our businesses, and we thought we were doing probably what was right, but probably that was the worst thing that we could have done. Kids need to go to school. My grandson's right here, and he's from Los Angeles, and he's going to school right here because they're not going to open their schools until after the election, which I think is real political. So he's here going to school, and he gets up in the morning happy, and he gets out of school happy, and it's just great to have him. You know, a month ago, I heard this on the news. 90 children died from the COVID-19 virus. 90 children the first several months of the virus. And that's horrible. That's horrible. But 1,750 children died from child abuse. What does that tell you? That tells you need to go to school. It needs you to get out of the house. It's more dangerous for some kids to be in the house than it is to be in school. And I'm the one that's in danger. If my grandchild brings me that virus home, I'm ready for it. That's a chance I'm willing to take. Kids, 12 million kids in America depend on their lunches, their food, breakfast, lunch. For 42% of the children here in America depend on their health care. My sister-in-law is a nurse in Atchison, and really they need 2 nurses. There are so many kids that come in and see her that they need a second person as well. Older kids need to be in school as well. I can't imagine. I was a math major in college, had great professors. I can't imagine taking a hard math class online. It just wouldn't work. They need to play football. They need to play volleyball. They need to run track. They need to do their speeches. And the reason for that, they need to be busy. Kids need to be as busy as they can. The worst thing they can do is have free time and be running around and driving. So that's important. And businesses need to open up also. And they just need to be careful and keep their social distances and follow the rules.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Ms. Mernan, 2 minutes.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. There's no doubt that issues surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic will dominate the 2020 Kansas legislative session when it begins in January. One topic is likely to be the state's role in a public health crisis like the one we've experienced this year. In your opinion, what should the state's role be in a public health crisis like the one we've experienced this year?
So while my opinion may be super important to me, there are a lot of statutory requirements that already define what the state's role is in a public health crisis. The word public is there for a purpose. It is for the common good. It's for the good of the many over the good of a few. So when we think about that concept, public health has been around for a long, long time. And one of the things that we have found in our state during this particular public health crisis, which, let's face it, is different than we've seen in our lifetime, that we can kind of chunk things out in a couple ways. The first one is the concept of public health officials and the roles that are involved in that. I think if nothing else has come out of this pandemic is people understand better that there is a lot of different levels of how government is involved in public health, from the local public health officials to the state to the federal government. The other component is economic development. So while it is, sure, businesses need to be open, and I would agree with that, I think that you have to chunk that down into specific strategies. I think the state is on the right track with incentivizing businesses to work safely, with focusing on specific business types and the things that they are encountering that is keeping them from being successful, such as supply chain issues. By embedding infrastructure support such as broadband and ability to telework in, and the state is doing that right now. The other thing is, I think we have to remember that part of the role of government, whether it's in public education, is leveling the playing field for all. And I think that this public health crisis has shown us that the field is not level for all. And if we haven't learned that in this crisis, that's a darn shame. And my hope in the next legislative session is we use what we have learned to make the systems stronger that are out there, whether they're public or private, and then also to watch the budget very closely.
Okay, thank you both. Our second advanced question will be answered first by Ms. Mernan, and the question is this. Every state bordering Kansas has now expanded its Medicaid program, citing the advantages of a healthier population along with increased federal funding. Locally, Medicaid expansion would generate more than $11 million in new healthcare spending in Crawford County alone, with both Ascension Via Christi Hospital and the Community Health Center of Southeast Kansas, each estimating they would receive an additional $2 million per year. What is your opinion of Medicaid expansion in Kansas, and would you support it? Ms. Mernan, 2 minutes.
Great question. I have supported it multiple times. I've voted for it multiple times, but more importantly, I understand it. I understand what Medicaid expansion means from the very high-level concept of as it came out many, many years ago, but I understand what it means to individual people in our community, the people that fall in the gap. I also understand what it means to our healthcare providers, everybody from dentists to our bigger providers such as Community Health and Ascension. And I understand the misinformation that's out there and the simple, inaccurate talking points that continue to be repeated and repeated. But what I really understand about Medicaid expansion, and why I will continue to go to countless meetings and talk to countless people about it, is that it fills in a gap. It fills in a gap with a specific group of people. It fills in gaps, and anytime we're trying to create a strong community, you have to watch your gaps. And I believe Medicaid expansion does that. The other thing that we know is that we are just leaving money on the table on a daily basis. So if you don't buy the humanity component of it, that individual adults should have the chance to get a mammogram and should have a chance to go get a checkup. If you don't buy that, fine. You gotta buy the economic impact. We, as of today, as a state, have left $4.3 billion on the table that is going to other states. Does not make economic sense, and it is by far one of the clearest decisions that I have made and will continue to make in the legislature to vote yes on Medicaid expansion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith, same question.
Thank you. This is one that my opponent and I differ on greatly. I don't think it's been voted on many times. I know the Republicans don't let it come up. Missouri and Oklahoma did pass Medicaid expansion, but the Missouri, I remember the Missouri governor say he doesn't want to, but since it was on the general ballot, he would go ahead and do what the people ask. Why do we not want Medicaid example? We can't afford it. We can't afford it. It's going to cost the state $130 million their part to have Medicaid expansion. Now, the federal government's going to give us $900 million, but the federal government doesn't have $900 million. What they're going to do, they're not going to give us anything. That $900 million is a loan that my grandson is going to have to pay back in 30 years, and we're really jeopardizing our grandchildren's future, and which isn't fair at all. I remember President Obama made the comment, we're $16 trillion in debt as a country. He said that's immoral. Now we're $26 trillion in debt with a couple more trillion coming up on the stimulus package. That is really immoral. And again, we're throwing that on our grandchildren, and that's not correct. January 1st this year, we were $900 million in the black. July 1st this year, we're $250 million in the black. We're doing good. January 1, 2021, we're $650 million in debt, behind. And in July 2022, we're going to be $1.4 billion in debt. So we can't afford the expansion. It's not that I don't want to help people, it's just that it's going to cost us money that we don't have, and the federal government can't, give money away that they don't have. It's just not fair to our future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Our final prepared question tonight will be answered first by Mr. Smith. As you both know, the completion of the Highway 69 project has long been one of this area's top priorities. If elected, what assurance can you give the residents of District 3 that you will make the continued expansion of Highway 69 a priority? Mr. Smith.
Thank you. In 2016, 2015, Jake LaTurner and I sat in Governor Brownback's office, and we said, hey, we told the people of southeast Kansas we were going to extend that highway from Fort Scott to Pittsburg. And Mr. LaTurner gave Governor Brownback a plan, I think that Mr. Brock worked on as well. But again, the governor accepted that, and we were in financial straits at the time. So when he accepted it, and what he did, he went from Fort Scott to around Arcadia with that four-way highway. And then Governor Collier took over, and he promised the people of Pittsburgh that he would finish that. But then he was defeated in the election, and I appreciate Governor Kelly going ahead and doing what Governor Collier said. So she did say, yeah, we will do this project, and it will go on. But just a minute ago, I told you in January 1, we're going to be $1 billion in the hole. So I'd like to say we're going to build that bypass around Pittsburgh. We really need it. My good friend, the late Mark Schuffelbein, said the bypass is no longer a bypass, it's a busy street. But again, if you're $1 billion in the hole, I don't know how much building is going to go on. And the state of Kansas has a 0.4% tax on gasoline, and they'll swipe that tax and they'll use it for other things. But again, they don't have enough to build that bypass. And after the bypass, we need to take it to Highway 400. And then from 400, we need to take it to Highway 44. But again, that's going to be real tough because of the financial situation that we're going to be in. I know the businesses in Pittsburgh need it. They've been promising us that for 20 years, and I think it's going to be a while before it happens yet. But I'll do everything I can to achieve that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Bernan, same question.
So the question is, how are we going to keep it up front? You keep it up.
What assurance can you give the residents of District 3 that you will make the continued expansion of Highway 69 a priority?
So one thing is, the game's all new now. The Kansas Department of Transportation proposed a new plan that the legislature passed this year that changes the whole game about how transportation is funded in Kansas. So the way we used to work with conversations like he referenced doesn't work anymore. That's old school. Doesn't happen. There's a new plan. It's called the Ike Plan. It's a 10-year plan. It's based on a rolling concept. It is based on multiple different priorities. Are the projects right-sized? Is there cost sharing? Is there an opportunity for cost sharing? How are you considering broadband expansion at the same time that you're looking at highway expansions and new technologies? And we're looking at multimodal options. So the old way of doing things is not what is going to happen in the future. So the first thing that I've done to ensure that we are keeping this 50-year conversation front and center is had phone calls with the Secretary of the Department of Transportation and said, what do we need to do to move this forward? We all know it's a good thing. What do we need to do? And said, how do we fit into this new plan? And have been having ongoing conversations with the Department of Transportation and the local folks who have been dedicated for a long time to getting this done. Keep it out front. But to do that, we are absolutely going to have to be flexible in what that looks like and can we fit into the new system. Additionally, as the budget gets tighter, the cold and hard facts are we will have to look at every transportation plan, but there in this new bill, there are some triggers in there that make it a little harder to move money out and do things like we used to do when we called it robbing the bank of KDOT. And so I will continue to work with everybody possible to get this off the checklist because it needs to be done.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, we'll now move into the section of tonight's event where you will answer questions that were submitted by the general public. We ask that all questions be fair and applicable to both candidates. So we won't ask any questions directed at one of you tonight. It will be applicable to both candidates. The first question from the public will be answered first by you, Ms. Murnan. Serving in the Kansas legislature means frequently working with those that may have differing priorities. Citing specific examples, tell us about times that you have reached across the aisle to work with the other party and or those you may not have agreed with. 2 minutes.
Happens every day. If it doesn't happen every day, you're not doing a good job. If you're only talking to people who agree with you, you might as well just stay here. Just stay here and talk to people at the donut shop or wherever it is you talk to them. So specifically, Women's Caucus Group got together, a group of freshman women who had not ever worked together on a topic, could not be farther apart in ideology when it came time to stopping the brownback tax experiment. What we did was simply say, what are the facts? And we talked, and we talked, and we gathered, and we kept doing the math when it got harder. That's an example. That group of people grew to a bigger group, and we were able to stop the brownback tax experiment, which just about gutted our state. The other specific example is that I serve on several different, what you would call bipartisan groups that are specific to topic and content. And those are some of my favorite things to do because you're talking to people from a variety of different areas. So for example, the CanCare Oversight Committee. There couldn't be a group of people who disagree more. And I thoroughly enjoy being the ranking Democratic member from the House on that. Other specific examples, I go to things where I just am not necessarily interested in something, but I want to know more about it because obviously it's important to another group of people. So whether it's an informational topic or evening event or go listen in on other committees and talk to people that I would not normally talk to in my daily activities, whether they be from a particular party or a particular interest group, I do it every day and it's the only way to get the job done.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Murnan. Mr. Smith, same question.
Thank you. When I was elected, I talked to the speaker and I asked the speaker, would you please set me next to the Democratic caucus so I could talk to them, so I could hear what views they have? Because again, Pittsburgh is 50 Democrat, 50 Republican, and I think it's important that I represent both sides, and I wanted to hear what they had to say. My son Nick and I were talking last night. One bill that we voted on was that illegal children who graduate from Kansas high school, that spent 3 years in Kansas high schools, can go to a state college for in-state tuition. And I voted for that. And again, I thought about my mom. If you take away their in-state tuition, they'll never get to go to school. So, you know, and one of the Democrats came up to me afterwards and said, thanks for voting with us. I said, I didn't vote with you, I voted with us, you know. That's the way it ought to be. And that night I drove home to Atchison and to see my brothers. It's just 50 miles from Topeka. And I heard Mark Levin say, oh, those crazy Republicans that voted for the illegals to go to in-state tuition, to get in-state tuition. I said, hey, I made the Mark Levin show. I said, holy cow. And then last night, again, Nick and I were checking my record. And Nick said, Dad, there was only 17 representatives that were more liberal than you. So I did. I am a moderate. I'm in the middle on the right. I'm not a hardcore right person. I do listen to everybody, and I do work with everybody, and that's something I was real proud of.
Okay, thank you both. Our next question from the public will be answered first by you, Mr. Smith. We know that the state's adopted budget is the result of months of discussion and compromise among the 125 House members, 40 senators, and of course, the governor. Let's say that you were king or queen, respectively, for a day and had total authority to shape the state's budget as you saw fit. What changes would you make to the state's current budget to fit your vision and priorities?
Now,
Mr. Smith.
The budget money doesn't change. It's the same. I think if the money's the same.
If you had the authority to completely shape a budget without having to get approval from anyone else, what would you change from the current budget to fit that vision?
Yeah. You know, that's really a toughie. You know, I was listening to Richard Hildebrand the other night, and he was saying that 72% of our budget goes to public education or to higher education. And again, in this mess that we're in right now, with everybody having a shortfall, everybody's going to have to come together and work with each other and just make it work. So like I say, how much do you need just to make it work? We got to get through this. How much do you need to make it work? Because I heard the sheriff people saying how hard it was because they got these regulations that they have to do, but they don't have the money to do it. So again, without the money, boy, it's just something that everybody has to do their part. I would just ask everybody, hey, let's do our share and let's cut wherever we can cut and let's make it work and get through this and bring Kansas back to good times. And when Kansas comes back to good times, then we can open back up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Bernan, 2 minutes.
So, number one, know the budget and understand it. These are the facts. This is the published facts about everything about the Kansas budget there is. You have to understand it. You have to know what's in it. And if you don't understand it, you have to ask questions. So one thing that during the last session that was completely different than the smoke and mirrors budget of the first session that I was involved in, which was pure fabricated accounting, we now know exactly where we are. And we were in the process, based on good, solid tax policy that had been put into place, we were in the process of digging ourselves out. And while my opponent references dollar amounts that didn't quite get, but that it was going to go down, we knew that there would hit a plateau. But one of the things that we knew had to happen was that we had to look at the horrible hole we were in chunks. And we were just at the point where we were finishing up the first chunk, knowing that something else would have to happen. There's two choices, right? You increase revenue or you decrease expenses. One of the things that we did in this last budget cycle was got rid of all the smoke and mirrors, but more importantly, looked at where every dollar was going in the context of programs. So looking at it more specifically, just saying the Department of Agriculture is getting this and that. But there's a long way to go there. So if I was in charge, we would look at more outcomes-based budgeting. So we would know on every dollar if we're achieving the goal that we wanted to achieve. If the goal was to fund schools in a certain way, or if the goal was to ensure that our Department of Agriculture had subsidy opportunities for our farmers, but we would be able to measure that. That has started. And if I were the queen, I would keep moving in that direction.
Okay, thank you both. Next question from the public will be answered first by Ms. Murnane. You both not only have served as legislators, but I think most people know that you're both teachers as well. And in fact, I believe today is World Teachers Day.
It
So
is.
thank you to you both because you both had successful careers in education. So I think you're more than qualified to answer this question. Give us your take on the current state of education in Kansas, and what changes would you like to see related to education in our state? Ms. Burnand, 2 minutes.
Well, that's easy to answer in 2 minutes now, isn't it? That's a big question. So let's take it in this context. Public education is the great equalizer. It is. It always has been. And we have to invest in it in our state the way our state constitution is written. We will do that. We will fund it adequately. In the words that we have had many conversations about. In public education, we have an opportunity from learning from these last 9 months of COVID. So we have learned a lot in public education. Everything from how we serve children with special needs to how we serve children who may or may not have appropriate documentation in order to give them the advantages that public education might be able to do. The other thing that we learned is that we can't keep doing business the way we've been doing it forever. It's not 1975 anymore. We have to adapt, and because Kansas is a local control state, we look to local boards of education to do that. I believe local boards have responded in great ways over the last 9 months. One thing that we have to make sure of is that we stop talking about K-12 and that we're talking about birth through college or whatever post high school education is appropriate for a kid. We have to look at it as a continuum, and we have to look at it as multiple means of providing it. So whether it's in-person, online, project-based, whatever it is, we are so past having that argument that it has to happen in 4 walls in a building. And I think our public education system is unique in Kansas in that we have a state board of education that is in control, but is funded by the legislature. And so we have to stay focused. We have to stay focused on giving kids and families choices in every community there is across the state of Kansas, whether they have 50 kids in their building or 5,000.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Burnand. Mr. Smith, your take on the current education system and changes you would like to see?
Well, again, I look back at my high school days. Boy, I had wonderful, wonderful high school teachers and coaches and a curriculum that I got to choose a little bit. You know, as a state, what we did, we kind of made everybody go towards a college prep. And I think that's a mistake. It's nice that everybody could go to college and everybody can get a college education, but that doesn't give you a job. Back when I was in high school, a fourth of the class went to VOTEC. They went to welding, they went to carpentry, they went to metals, and I think Carl Wood in our community here has done a wonderful job of getting the VOTEC, or what it's called, is going. I think that is such a positive, because not only are some kids built for that, they're good paying jobs. One of my students, Riley Wood, he's a high linesman for an electric company. He probably makes $150,000 a year. He doesn't need that college education. He needs that VOTEC education because that's the kind of student that he is. And again, we've dropped a lot of those classes. The woodshop classes are gone. The drafting classes are not the same. And like I say, I miss those days. I think it was good for kids to get a well-rounded everything, and a lot of kids needed to go to hands-on type work instead of college education.
Okay, thank you both. Our next question will be answered first by you, Mr. Smith. In the week ending September 19th, the U.S. Department of Labor says more than 17,000 initial jobless claims were filed in the state of Kansas, and according to the Kansas Department of Labor, more than 103 Kansans of working age still remain without a job. Fortunately, that's not the question. The state's unemployment rate currently sits at 6.9%, even though I'll point out that we're a little lower here in Crawford County. But the question is, what policies will you support as a state representative to help businesses recover from the pandemic and get Kansans back to work? What policies would you support as a state representative to help businesses recover from the pandemic and get Kansans back to work?
I really believe that in the federal government, there's going to be a stimulus package which is going to help small businesses get back on their feet and get employers. If you drive around town, there's a lot of people that are looking for workers. And we cannot give unemployment, we can't give them more money for unemployment than we do if they go to work. That's a silly thing that we did there. You know, if a guy goes to work for $7.25 minimum wage and he's good, his salary is going to increase quickly. But again, we have to go to work for minimum wage, and we have to fill these positions. And I know that Masonite out here, they have a hard time filling spots because people don't pass the drug test. They come in and they take the drug test and they work in the morning and then they don't come back in the afternoon. I was talking to Caleb Farabi at Pepsi. He drives his own truck 3 days a week, and the reason why, he can't find workers. The jobs are there, but you have to take it and you got to work your way up. And again, if you're a good worker, somebody's going to hire you and somebody's going to pay you a lot more. And you got to get that VOTEC type job, or, you know, again, the college education. I love college education, but that VOTEC job is going to guarantee you an electronics job or a plumber's job or a thing like that. And it's just going to give you the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Mernan.
The question was specific to policies in the legislature to support business, correct?
Correct.
It's 2020. Things are different. We have to look at what is happening right now, not what happened in the past. We have to look at the current status. We have to look at the data of where the jobs are, what are the missing skill sets, why can't we make those two things meet? We can guess based on our own experiences and our own knowledge base that we surround ourselves with. But the bottom line is right now, the Kansas Department of Commerce is doing an excellent job of looking at the data and the facts about Kansans and where they can or should work. The bottom line that we have found through multiple strategies of looking at this very systematically, it is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not as simple as saying go to a minimum wage job. It's not as simple as that because you have multiple tiers here, not meant to be excuses, just a reality of the current workforce situation. So one big thing that comes up consistently over and over is lack of childcare and access to childcare for working families. We see that here in our community, even with the massive efforts we have taken over the last 20 years. Well documented, not a perception. The other thing that we know for sure is that soft skills can get into the way of people getting and or keeping a job. And that could include everything that was mentioned before of substance abuse issues, behavioral health issues, but oftentimes it's as simple as transportation, as simple as the way that you were trained to ask and answer questions and your language abilities. The thing that is really critical with the state is we can never think this is as simple as one strategy. So in our state legislative session and in our prioritizing, we have to have multiple strategies from everything from job training, as mentioned, all the way up to internet connectivity for folks who can access work from home.
Okay, thank you both. Mr. Smith alluded a little bit to this, but I want to ask the standalone question and give both of you the opportunity to offer your opinion on this, and you'll go first, Ms. Mernan. The Kansas Department of Labor is currently providing some unemployed Kansans with an additional $300 per week in benefits on top of their regular unemployment benefits. Some business owners are increasingly concerned that this could actually stifle an economic recovery and that it provides a deterrent to some employees to return to work. Pardon me. What is your opinion on the additional $300 benefit, and how long do you think it should be offered? What is your opinion on the additional $300 unemployment benefit currently being offered not only in Kansas but in many other states, and how long should it be offered in Kansas? Ms. Murnett.
So in the hard, cold reality of today, 2020, October, beginning of October 2020, whatever date it is, doesn't matter what I think, how long it should be offered. It's a federal program, and it's going to be offered, I think it's like 10 weeks or something. I have a nice sheet on my desk at home that shows me the different benefits. I agree that some people may choose to say, I can do more here than here. And that may happen. But in reality, I think it happens a small portion of the time. The other thing that we really need to be more cognizant of is how many families do live right on the line all the time. And they are not always there by choice, contrary to popular belief. So when we look at issues regarding benefits like unemployment insurance and how it fits into this public health crisis, there is no simple answer. Will people make choices that are not the best choices? Sure they will. But will it keep them alive and keep their kids fed? Yeah. And I'm willing to err on that side. The other issue that we know for sure with Kansas and unemployment laws, we have some of the strictest laws there are. They have been put into place over years and years. And so, in my opinion, there are lots of things that are built in to keep that as a safety net, but also not be overused. But right now, the reality is we're following federal mandates.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Murnett. Mr. Smith, your opinion on the additional $300 unemployment benefit and how long you think it should be offered?
What I would like to see is that person that's making $7.25 an hour get that $300 extra money until they get, again, promoted to a different level where they can go. You know, insurance is a big thing. And I was talking to Dan Hawkins, who's on the insurance committee, and he said if a person makes $7.25 an hour, they make $12,500 a year, they can buy their health insurance for about $20 a month with no deductibles or no co-pays. And see, that's a great benefit also. So yes, I would give that $300 not to the person that's not working, but give that $300 to the person that's making that low income and giving them a chance to benefit themselves and work their way up and get themselves out of poverty, because there's too much poverty, and I agree with that. But part of it is we got to get out and work. Again, going back to Masonite, it's a hard job. A lot of people don't want to do it. And they pay, I don't know, $10, $11, $12 an hour. And a lot of people think, oh, that's not enough money for as hard as you work. But I'm sorry. It's a good paying job. You got to go to work. And again, you work your way up somewhere else. If you're a good worker, somebody else is going to come get you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're down to our final question from the public, and it'll be answered first by Mr. Smith. This resident had seen where the state was potentially facing a $1.4 billion deficit for fiscal year 2022. A potential $1.4 billion deficit for fiscal year 2022. If that were to happen, what would be some of the things you would propose to address a deficit of that size? I may have kind of jumbled that up a little bit, so let me read it one more time. With the state potentially facing a $1.4 billion deficit for fiscal year 2022, what are some things you would propose to address a deficit of that size? Mr. Smith, 2 minutes.
Again, that's tough. That's and that's a reality also. I mean, that's going to happen. And being a Republican, Republicans want low taxes and less regulation, less law. They want to be, and if we have a $1.4 billion deficit, you're not going to be able to reduce taxes. It sounds bad, but you might have to raise them in some situations because you have to fill that void that's there. I was eating supper one night with an old fireman in Topeka. And he was teasing me, and he was probably in his 90s, and he said, Chuck, cut, 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 but don't cut mine. And that's how everybody feels. Yeah, cut this program over here, but leave mine alone. Cut this program over here, but leave mine alone. I think if you have a deficit of 1.4, everybody's going to have to take a 10, 15% cut and keep them all going and surviving until we get back on our feet and going again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Murnane, same question.
I would agree that everybody says cut, 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 but not me. I would also agree that when you ask people specifically who think you should cut and ask them where, they cannot answer. They truly cannot answer because it's such a complex topic. There is not enough money to cut with those kinds of projections. And we've seen this coming as, again, we have dug ourselves out of a tax experiment, which quite honestly, my opponent was supportive of. We had to dig ourselves out. And in digging out of that, we knew we were going to have to come up with the next step. There's been a huge group, a bipartisan group of tax and policy experts from across the United States and our state having this conversation at a very serious level for over a year and a half. And instead of making just generalized statements, really looking specifically. There is some discussion regarding the importance of a fourth tax bracket to add to our third. There's some discussions about the fact that we can adjust some rates. Because as a quick reminder, in general, folks, even with the adjustments that were made following Brownback leaving, even with those adjustments, most people are paying less in Kansas income tax as a rate than they were in 2012. So there's still some adjustments to play in there. I would take the information that was gathered through this very articulated and intelligent process, look at those items, in addition to looking at any reductions in the budget that were possible. But when you do the math, there's not enough to cut. So one of the things we have to ensure is that the revenues continue to come in to support so that we don't have such a large deficit. And we have to watch those revenues, and we have to watch the investments that we're making on those revenues.
Okay, thank you both. We will wrap up the evening with 2 minutes of closing statements. And Ms. Murnane, you will give your closing statement first.
So thanks. That was 47 minutes that went fast, but also felt like 5 hours, didn't it? That's a great opportunity to sit down and really have a serious conversation, and I appreciate my opponent in having that conversation. What I'd like for the voters to know is that I enjoy digging in to policy. I enjoy digging into systems. Because when you do that, you can serve your constituents better. One of the things I enjoy about the legislatures the most is constituent services. When somebody calls and says, I can't get my grandma into the rest home because we can't get her Medicaid application completed. I love digging into that. And I've done that so many times over the last 4 years. When someone, a hairstylist who never was eligible for unemployment before, but because of the pandemic has no idea how to get through the system, I helped probably 35 people all the way to the finish line on their Department of Labor request. Sometimes it was a good finish line and sometimes it wasn't, but all the way to the end. That's what I enjoy doing. I think that's what this job is. I get the area, I have the broad base of experience, I have the capacity to do the job, and I want to do the job because I believe that once you get to Topeka, our voice here in Southeast Kansas is awfully quiet. Awfully quiet. And I don't like that. And so I want to be that voice and continue to be the voice, but be one in a way that is specific and strategic and stays focused on the issues that are important to us, like public education, health care, and the transportation finally getting done, along with the things that are important to individual people, which are as varied as the people here. So I'd appreciate folks vote. More importantly, I'd appreciate the opportunity to talk to folks, and they can contact me at any time on my website, cell phone, or any other way possible. People can find me, I hope, and I would want to visit with them and ask for their vote.
Thank you, Ms. Murnane. Mr. Smith, your
Thank
closing
you.
statements.
Thank you. My opponent made the comment that because I supported Brownback, we have to dig out of the problem that he created. Earlier in my talk, I said January 1 this year, we were $900 million in the black. So we're not digging out any hole. We're $900 million in the black. It's the pandemic that took us down. It wasn't Brownback. They're still blaming Brownback for everything. You know, there's three main things that we disagree on. Number one, with my opponent, we don't have a voice in Topeka. There's 84 Republicans up there and there's 41 Democrats. They need 63 votes to pass a bill. They got 84 Republicans, so we need a Republican to have a voice in Topeka so I can say during the agenda what I feel and what we need in Pittsburgh. And again, I do listen to both sides. Pro-life, we disagree there. That never came up. But Kansas aborts 7,000 babies every year. My son Nick said, Dad, the population of Pittsburgh never grows. The population of Kansas never grows. Well, we're aborting 7,000 healthy babies every year. That's not right. And again, we differ on Medicaid expansion. Not that I don't want to give it. I would love for my mother to have had that when she was a little girl. But again, we can't afford it. The state cannot afford that. We're spending money that we don't have. So my grandson, again, using him a lot, we watch the Lorax every night. And the Lorax, he says, I speak for the trees. Well, I speak for the unborn babies. We tried to pass a bill, an amendment that would protect the bills that have been passed since 1997, and the Democrats voted 41-0 against that bill. Monica could have voted for the bill and it still would have failed and it would have made her look better, but she went along with the block. So again, that amendment could do this. It could jeopardize parental consent, dismemberment, abortion, and maybe abort that baby 22 months after, in 22 weeks in labor. We gotta stop that.
Okay, thank you both for your closing statements. I hope our audience members will give both candidates a round of applause. Thank you both for your time, your willingness to serve the residents of the district. Again, thank you so much to the city of Pittsburgh for hosting us this evening and encourage everybody to come out and vote. And with that, I'll wish you a good evening.
Thank you, Blake.